Welcome, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, we're peeling back the layers on something profoundly human, yet often profoundly frustrating: the art of forgetting.
hmm
Specifically, we're talking about why we often forget the very pain that propelled us to change, only to find ourselves looking back at difficult periods through, well, rose-tinted glasses.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
a really common experience.
You know that feeling, right? You swore you'd never go back to that old job, that toxic relationship, that destructive habit, because of the sheer misery it caused.
Absolutely. The memory feels so sharp at the time.
But then, as time passes, the sharp edges of that memory sort of soften, and suddenly the good old days don't seem so bad after all, maybe even appealing again.
Indeed. We're diving into the scientific basis of this phenomenon, often linked to Hermann Ebbinghaus's forgetting curve, but with a really critical psychological twist.
Okay.
It's not just that memories fade passively, it's that our minds actively and often subconsciously work to minimize past discomfort.
Actively work, like on purpose.
In a way, yes. To protect us, perhaps,
Yeah.
but it leads us to romanticize former good times and become incredibly vulnerable to repeating old mistakes.
Wow.
So this isn't just about losing information. It's about losing our hard-won lessons and the very motivation for continued growth.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is clear. We want to understand the intricate psychological mechanisms behind this predictable forgetting, especially in those really high-stakes contexts like personal recovery or breaking toxic cycles or driving significant personal growth.
Right, where remembering the why is absolutely crucial.
And then, crucially, it will equip you with concrete, actionable strategies to actively remember your why, ensuring those hard-won lessons stick.
Yeah, turning past pain into a powerful, enduring motivator for your present and future.
To do this, we've pulled insights from an incredibly rich and diverse stack of sources. We're talking experimental psychology, theories of cognitive dissonance, habit formation, the nature of trauma, even existential philosophy.
It's a fascinating mix, really. It shows how complex this issue is.
We're going to explore how our minds, in their effort to protect us, can inadvertently set us up for relapse and stagnation. It's kind of a double-edged sword.
It really is.
Okay, so our journey into the mechanics of memory, it really starts not with abstract philosophy, but with the rigorous scientific pursuits of Hermann Ebbinghaus back in the late 19th century.
Right. This is where the true complexity of memory begins to reveal itself. Before Ebbinghaus, memory was largely discussed in, well, introspective philosophical terms. It wasn't really quantified.
So he wanted to measure it, like put numbers on forgetting.
Exactly. He approached it with the precision of a physicist seeking to measure something as elusive as forgetting itself. His groundbreaking work, meticulously detailed in his book Memory, a contribution to experimental psychology, truly laid the empirical foundation for how we understand memory retention and loss today.
And how did he even begin to measure something like pure memory?
Well, that was the challenge. He wanted to study information untainted by prior associations, personal meaning, or emotional context. You know, the stuff that usually helps us remember things.
Right, like remembering a poem versus just random words.
Precisely. So he needed a completely new and frankly rather ingenious experimental method.
And what was that method? I remember hearing about it. Something unusual.
He famously invented and used nonsense syllables. These were carefully constructed combinations of a consonant, a vowel, and another consonant. Things like dax, zuel, or kif.
Ah, right. CVC trigrams.
Exactly. The brilliance of these was their complete lack of inherent meaning, at least for him as a German speaker learning them. He would create these vast, structured series of syllables, often 12, 16, 24, or even 36 at a time.
That sounds incredibly tedious.
Oh, absolutely meticulous, but it allowed him to isolate the raw mechanics of rote memorization and forgetting, free from any pre-existing knowledge or emotional baggage that might influence recall.
So what did he do with these lists? Just memorize them?
Yes, but very systematically. His process involved memorizing the series up to the first errorless reproduction. So it wasn't just about recall, but about the effort needed to learn it perfectly once.
The effort. Okay.
He would repeat these series to himself at a constant metronomic speed, reading them out loud, until he could recite the entire list perfectly just one time without looking.
And then, did he test himself later?
Yes. After various time intervals, minutes, hours, days, he would attempt to recall, or rather relearn the same list. He meticulously measured how much less time or how many fewer repetitions it took him to get back to that single perfect recitation.
Ah, so the savings, that's the
Yeah,
key measure.
exactly. This saving in repetitions became his quantifiable measure of retention. The less effort it took to relearn, the more he had technically retained.
That's a remarkable way to quantify it. So what did he find? Did memory just fade steadily?
Not quite steadily. His data revealed something profound. For a series of, say, 16 syllables, it might initially take him around 16 or 17 repetitions to learn. But after 24 hours, when he went back to relearn it, he might only need, say, 11 repetitions. That means he saved 5 or 6 repetitions, a saving of about 33%.
So a third of the effort was saved after a whole day.
Right. And for longer series, that saving percentage could actually be higher, sometimes over 50%. It suggested that the initial learning creates an inner depth of impression, and the depth increases with attentive repetitions.
But the savings weren't always proportional to the effort, were they?
No, and that's crucial. His painstaking methodology led to his central discovery, the forgetting curve. Ebbinghaus observed that we forget information at a predictable but distinctly nonlinear rate.
Non-linear, how so?
The most significant drop-off in memory occurs very rapidly, often within the first few hours or the first day after learning. It's quite steep initially.
So you forget most of it really fast.
A large chunk, yes. After this initial precipitous decline, the rate of forgetting then levels off, becomes much more gradual over the following days and weeks.
So it's not like a straight line down. It's more like a steep slide than a gentle slope.
Exactly. That curve is a fundamental aspect of our cognitive architecture. But he also noted something subtle. The relationship between the number of repetitions and the long-term stability of the memory isn't perfectly proportional.
Meaning more cramming doesn't always equal better long-term memory.
Essentially, yes. While initial learning effort advances quickly, the stability of the memory, its resistance to forgetting over time, advances noticeably more slowly. More effort helps, but there are diminishing returns in terms of long-term stability.
Okay, that's fascinating just from a learning perspective. But how does this connect back to forgetting pain?
Well, the truly unsettling insight from Ebbinghaus's meticulous work isn't just that memory fades predictably. It's that our brain's inherent efficiency, its drive to prune what it deems unnecessary or unused information, like maybe those nonsense syllables, becomes a profound liability.
Liability.
Because what if those unnecessary fragments being pruned are precisely the searing memories of pain that once spurred us to transform our lives? It's like our brain has a built-in obsolescence function for our own motivation.
Wow. So the question isn't just if we forget, but what gets prioritized for deletion by our subconscious. Does Ebbinghaus give us any clues there?
He actually does, indirectly. And here's where we make a crucial bridge. Ebbinghaus himself contrasted his nonsense syllables with more meaningful material. He noted that learning English stanzas, like from Byron's Don Juan, required less than half of the repetitions necessary for the shortest of the syllable series.
So meaning makes things stick better. That makes sense.
Exactly. And crucially, those meaningful stanzas acquired so great stability that for their reproduction on the next day, proportionally no more work was needed than for the series of 24 syllables.
Okay, so meaning equals memory glue.
Pretty much. This tells us that meaning profoundly influences retention. While the general forgetting curve might apply to all information, what we attach to the memory, the context, the emotion, the narrative, the meaning, can dramatically influence its stickiness.
And that insight becomes absolutely critical when we start talking about remembering painful but important lessons. It's not just about the memory trace, but the meaning we assign, or perhaps fail to assign later on.
Precisely. Because if the meaning of the pain fades or gets distorted, the memory itself becomes much more vulnerable to that natural forgetting curve.
So our minds aren't just passive archives, letting memories fade like old photographs. They're active editors, constantly curating our internal narrative.
Constantly working.
And this is precisely where our deep dive takes its crucial turn. We're shifting from the raw mechanics of memory, like Ebbinghaus studied, to the insidious ways our own psychology can betray us.
Yes. Because it's not just what we forget, but how certain painful memories are uniquely vulnerable to being rewritten, minimized, or even romanticized.
It's not just passive decay, then.
Definitely not. It's often an active process driven by deep-seated psychological mechanisms. These mechanisms are usually designed to protect our sense of self, maintain internal consistency, and help us avoid discomfort.
Protecting ourselves. Sounds good, right?
It does. But the catch is that this consistency might be based on a distorted reality. It's like our mind becomes a skilled internal propagandist, crafting a narrative that feels better, even if it's not entirely true.
A self-protective delusion. Wow. Okay, so what's driving this internal propaganda?
One of the biggest players in this psychological landscape, making our minds tell these comforting lies, is Leon Festinger's theory of cognitive dissonance.
Ah, cognitive dissonance. I've heard of that. It's about conflicting thoughts, right?
Exactly. Festinger, in A Theory of Cognitive Dissonance, proposed that we humans have a powerful drive for internal consistency. We strive for our beliefs, attitudes, and actions to align.
Okay.
When there's an inconsistency, a dissonance between these elements, it creates profound psychological discomfort, like a real mental stress.
And we don't like feeling uncomfortable.
Not at all. So to mitigate this discomfort, we engage in various mental maneuvers, rationalizations, justifications, changing our attitudes, or even selective forgetting or reinterpretation of the past.
So we change our thinking to reduce the stress.
Precisely. This drive for consistency is a powerful motivator for positive change sometimes, but it's an equally powerful engine for self-deception and, crucially for our topic, the romanticization of the past.
How does that apply to forgetting pain?
Well, imagine this. You've changed a behavior because it was causing you intense pain or problems. Maybe you quit smoking, left a bad relationship, stopped procrastinating.
Okay, the initial motivation is clear, avoid the pain.
Right. But then, maybe weeks or months later, you start contemplating going back. Maybe you miss certain aspects or the immediate pain has faded. This creates a profound internal conflict, a dissonance. Your current self, I shouldn't do this, is clashing with a potential action. Maybe I'll just have one cigarette, or maybe it wasn't that bad.
That definitely sounds uncomfortable, so how do we resolve that?
According to Festinger, one common way we reduce this dissonance is by subtly changing our perception of the past choice. We might start emphasizing the positives of the chosen alternative, going back and minimizing the negatives of the rejected one staying changed.
So we start rewriting history in our heads.
Exactly. Our minds actively work to minimize or forget the pain of the old behavior, making it far easier to romanticize it and eventually slide back into those old patterns. The memory of the suffering gets downplayed to reduce the current conflict.
Wow. Robert Cialdini talks about something similar in Influence, doesn't he? With that low-balling technique.
That's a perfect real-world illustration. Cialdini describes how a car dealer might offer an incredibly attractive price to get you committed to buying a car.
Yeah, get you hooked.
Right. Then just before you sign, they discover an error, or the manager rejects the deal, and the price goes up, removing that initial advantage.
And you'd think people would walk away.
But surprisingly, many don't. Cialdini explains that the personal commitment the buyer has already made, they've pictured themselves driving the car, maybe told friends, starts to build its own support system of new justifications.
No reasons. Like what?
They might suddenly focus on the great gas mileage, the color they love, how smooth the test drive was. They shrug off the price increase, consoled, even made happy by the array of other good reasons favoring the choice.
Even though those reasons weren't enough before the lowball price.
Exactly. They don't realize these new reasons might not have existed or seemed important before the commitment was secured. It's a powerful parallel to how we rationalize returning to old habits. We forget the true cost, the original pain, and fabricate new reasons to make the old choice palatable again, just to reduce that internal dissonance.
That's a compelling point about how our minds generate reasons after the fact. And Festinger also mentions social groups reinforcing this, right?
Yes, that's a huge factor. He noted that individuals often seek confirmation of their beliefs from others, facilitating the addition of consonant cognitive elements.
So if our friends or family inadvertently romanticize our past bad habits, oh, remember how fun it was when, it makes it harder to remember the actual pain.
Absolutely. It adds external validation to our internal effort to minimize the negative. This also links to our information-seeking behavior. Festinger found we actively seek information that aligns with our existing beliefs and actively avoid information we expect will increase dissonance.
So we avoid talking about the bad parts, avoid thinking about them, avoid people who remind us of them.
Pretty much. We curate our information intake to support the narrative that feels most comfortable, which often means pushing away those inconvenient, painful truths about the past.
This cognitive alchemy, this drive for consistency, leads us directly to what you call the seduction of a romanticized past.
Exactly. Our minds don't just passively let painful memories fade. They actively reshape or selectively recall memories. They make the past seem much more appealing, or at least less painful than it actually was, especially once the immediate visceral discomfort has receded.
It's like memory isn't a recording, but a story we're constantly retelling.
That's a great way to put it. William James, a pioneer of psychology, understood this deeply back in his day. In the Principles of Psychology, he noted that nothing can be conceived twice over without being conceived in entirely different states of mind.
Our mood changes how we remember.
Our mood, our current context, our goals, everything. James said we think of things now in one context, now in another, now in a definite image, now in a symbol. This inherent fluidity, this malleability of memory, is what allows for that process of romanticization. The past becomes a curated highlight reel, not the unedited documentary.
It's like our personal history is a constantly re-edited film where the director, our subconscious, conveniently snips out the unflattering or painful scenes.
Precisely. And Oliver Sacks, the neurologist, provides fascinating clinical examples of memory strangeness in The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. While he often discussed profound memory loss, amnesia, he also touched upon the opposite, hypermnesia.
Hypermnesia, like too much memory.
Yes, uncontrollable, sometimes terrifyingly heightened memories, often linked to trauma or specific neurological conditions. The stark contrast between amnesia and hypermnesia highlights that memory isn't a direct, faithful playback. It can be distorted, suppressed, enhanced.
Or, in the case of painful experiences, maybe selectively diminished or edited.
Exactly. Forgetting painful details, then, might be a less severe, yet still profoundly impactful form of our mind's editing process. It's not a full suppression, like in some trauma responses, maybe, but a gradual softening of the memory's sharp emotional edges. The suffering is selectively dampened, like a self-administered psychic painkiller.
Does this reframing happen in more everyday, less extreme situations, too?
Oh, absolutely. Think about Philip Zimbardo's famous Stanford prison experiment, detailed in The Lucifer Effect. During the experiment, the student prisoners experienced intense distress. They lost track of time, their minds grew foggy, they felt dehumanized and abandoned.
It sounded horrific.
It was. Yet, in later debriefings and analyses, while the experience remained impactful, there was a tendency, understandably perhaps, for some participants and even researchers to reframe it. The focus shifted towards implicating the bad barrel, the powerful situational forces, rather than solely focusing on the individual choices or the raw, subjective suffering experienced moment to moment.
So the context gets blamed more than the actions or feelings.
Sometimes, yes. Or the sheer awfulness gets downplayed with time. The guards, Zimbardo noted, practically considered the prisoner's cattle a stark reality. But looking back, the memory of that dehumanization might soften, replaced by a more intellectual understanding of situational pressures. It shows how an objective, painful reality can be distorted through the lens of time and psychological defense.
And underlying all of this are these powerful psychic defenses, right?
Yeah.
These deep-seated mechanisms our minds use to shield us from discomfort.
Yes. Sigmund Freud, in Civilization and Its Discontents, explored this quite a bit. He suggested that to free oneself from suffering, one might try to control the inner sources of our needs, sometimes even by stifling the drives.
Suppressing desires to avoid pain?
Or suppressing the memories associated with the pain those desires might have caused. This defense mechanism could easily extend to actively suppressing or distorting painful memories to avoid future suffering by minimizing past discomfort.
Freud also talked about the intensity of forbidden pleasures, didn't he?
He did. He noted that the satisfaction of a wild, instinctual impulse that has not been tamed by the ego is incomparably more intense. This helps explain the irresistibility of perverse impulses or the powerful attraction of whatever is forbidden.
How does that connect to romanticizing the past?
It directly relates to romanticizing past bad times. Even if those times led to long-term pain or negative consequences, they might have also brought moments of short-term, intense pleasure or excitement. Our minds might be drawn back to that intensity, conveniently forgetting or downplaying the eventual much larger cost. The thrill overrides the memory of the fallout.
That makes sense. And Ernest Becker, in The Denial of Death, takes this avoidance even deeper, doesn't he?
He does. Becker posits that a fundamental human drive is to escape the terror of our own mortality and meaninglessness. This isn't just about physical death, but the death of the ego, the death of comfort, the death of cherished self-perceptions.
So forgetting past pain is a way to deny our vulnerability.
In a sense, yes. Forgetting past pain, according to Becker's framework, isn't merely passive. It's an active, unconscious defense mechanism against confronting our own fallibility, our vulnerability, and the existential discomfort that painful experiences inevitably expose. We deny the pain of the past because, in a subtle way, it reminds us of our limits, our fragility, our finitude. It's an avoidance of deep existential anxiety.
This isn't just about individual psychology either, is it? Erik Erikson's work, like in Childhood and Society, suggests our identity itself is shaped by how we remember our past.
Absolutely. Erikson emphasized that our sense of self, our identity, is constantly being constructed and reconstructed across our lifespan through various psychosocial stages. Part of that construction involves curating our personal narrative.
Curating how?
We might unconsciously edit out the painful old self, the embarrassing mistakes, or the challenging phases to construct a more coherent, consistent, and perhaps more aspirational present identity. It's not necessarily malicious, it's a natural process of self-definition. But it inadvertently sanitizes the very lessons we needed to retain from those difficult periods. We want to believe we've always been moving forward, rather than acknowledging the painful detours and missteps.
And C.G. Jung might see this through an even broader lens.
Possibly. Jung, with his ideas in the collected works about the collective unconscious and archetypes, might suggest that this tendency to avoid psychological pain isn't just individual. Could there be an archetypal pattern, a deep-seated human tendency hardwired into our collective psyche to deny discomfort?
Like a universal flight from pain.
Perhaps. This avoidance could be a powerful, almost inherited influence on this forgetting curve of suffering. We might be predisposed to gloss over our personal shadows, the difficult parts of our story, because of a deeper collective urge towards psychological equilibrium, even if that equilibrium is built on selective amnesia.
So ultimately, all these forces, cognitive dissonance, psychic defenses, identity construction, maybe even archetypes, conspire to make us forget the very pain that should be guiding us.
It seems that way. Our cognitive architecture, as Festinger highlighted, encourages information-seeking behavior that aligns with our existing beliefs, pushing away anything, including memories of past pain, that would increase dissonance and force an uncomfortable reevaluation of our choices and our past self. It's a complex web of self-protection that can seriously backfire. Okay, so if we connect all these psychological theories and memory mechanics to the bigger picture, it becomes clear this isn't just some abstract academic exercise.
Right, this isn't just about how memory works in a lab.
Exactly. This insidious process of forgetting pain and romanticizing the past has profound and often really devastating implications for our actual lives, especially when we're genuinely trying to make lasting, positive changes.
So the forgetting curve applied to pain isn't just about forgetting facts, it's about forgetting motivation.
Precisely. And that loss of motivation can lead to a tragic repetition of history, both on a personal level and sometimes even collectively. It's a serious problem.
Absolutely. And the core danger here seems to be that, over time, the memory of the pain that led us to change fades, while a romanticized memory of the good times can grow stronger.
Creating that dangerous pullback.
Yeah, pulling us back to old, often destructive patterns. Think about someone in recovery from addiction, or someone trying to leave and stay out of a truly toxic relationship.
The initial reasons for leaving are usually crystal clear and acutely painful.
Right. Things like financial ruin, maybe broken relationships with family, profound shame, serious health issues, or just sheer emotional exhaustion. The pain is visceral.
But then, as time passes, what happens? Those sharp edges blur, maybe the physical withdrawal symptoms recede, the constant arguments stop.
And suddenly, the perceived comfort, or perhaps the initial thrill or euphoria of the old situation, starts to seem much more appealing.
Exactly. It begins to overshadow the memory of the true devastating cost. The mind minimizes the negative and starts highlighting any perceived positives, however small or illusory they were.
This is where Bessel van der Kolk's work in The Body Keeps the Score seems incredibly relevant. He makes a powerful point about trauma and memory.
He really does. He emphasizes that trauma is not just an event that took place sometime in the past, it is also the imprint left by that experience on mind, brain, and body.
So even if we consciously forget the details, our body remembers.
That's the core idea. Forgetting the cognitive memory of pain, the narrative details, the story we tell ourselves, doesn't mean the body has forgotten the threat or the suffering.
What does that look like?
That physiological imprint can manifest as continued hypervigilance, chronic anxiety, unexplained physical pain, autoimmune issues, or it can directly contribute to relapse if the underlying somatic and emotional issues aren't fully processed and integrated.
So while our conscious mind might be busy romanticizing the past, Our body is still stuck in threat mode. That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It creates a complex and dangerous internal conflict. Our conscious memory might betray our deeper physiological experience, making us feel safe when our body knows we're not, or driving us back to familiar patterns that our body remembers as harmful.
And Daniel Goleman in Emotional Intelligence, he talks about a kind of numbing effect too, right? Especially with PTSD.
Yes, he provides further insight into this potential disconnect. He discusses studies where individuals with PTSD, when re-exposed to stimuli related to their trauma, like combat sounds, can actually show decreased pain sensitivity.
Decreased, you'd expect the opposite.
Right. It seems counterintuitive. But Goleman explains it as possibly an endorphin-based analgesia. The body releases natural painkillers in response to the trigger.
So it's a biological defense mechanism?
Plausibly, yes. But this emotional numbing or suppression of pain makes it incredibly difficult to accurately remember the actual severity of past suffering. It blunts the very internal warning system that should be protecting them from re-exposure to similar harmful situations.
Making the return to a dangerous environment seem less threatening than it really is. Wow.
Yeah. It essentially masks the danger signals.
And this pattern, this forgetting of pain and its consequences, it plays out tragically in our relationships too, doesn't it? Creating these repetitive, frustrating cycles.
Absolutely. Think about the work in Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. They highlight how differing intimacy needs, particularly between people with anxious and avoidant attachment styles, can create constant clashes and misunderstandings.
The anxious person needing closeness, the avoidant person needing space.
Exactly. And they stress that truly understanding these differences is crucial, but it's only the beginning. People often get stuck in these anxious avoidant traps where they struggle to reconcile their needs.
So how does forgetting pain play into that trap?
Well, if partners forget the specific pain of past conflicts, the loneliness, the frustration, the feeling of rejection or suffocation, or if they only remember the good times, or maybe a period of superficial calmness.
Which the anxious person might even interpret as the avoidant partner losing interest.
Right. Then it prevents real growth and change in the dynamic. They might repeat the same patterns like protest behavior from the anxious partner or withdrawal from the avoidant one because the painful lessons of prior interactions have been minimized or forgotten. They're left vulnerable to reopening the same old wounds.
It's like relationship Groundhog Day. And Carol Dweck's mindset research adds another layer here with the fixed mindset idea.
It does. Dweck explains how people with a fixed mindset, believing abilities and traits are unchangeable, tend to handle conflict poorly. They often assign blame to a character flaw in themselves or their partner.
Instead of seeing it as a behavior or situation that can be changed.
Exactly. This leads to anger and disgust rather than constructive problem solving. Now connect that to forgetting pain. If the specific pain of past relationship issues is forgotten, or if it's misattributed, they're just selfish, I'm just too needy, instead of seeing it as a dynamic issue.
Then the real lessons are lost.
Completely lost. You stop looking for solutions or ways to grow together. You just circle back to the same points of contention, seeing them as immutable flaws. You don't learn from the past pain to evolve the relationship because you've either forgotten how bad it felt or you've blamed it on something unchangeable.
And Goleman's work on emotional intelligence, he actually outlines a path towards relationship breakdown based on these cycles, right?
Yes, he talks about the trajectory toward divorce, often involving a reverberating cycle of criticism and contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. He calls them the four horsemen of the apocalypse for relationships, drawing on John Gottman's research.
Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, stonewalling. Sounds pretty grim.
It is. And Goleman links this cycle directly to a disintegration of emotional self-awareness and self-control. Now imagine if the visceral emotional memory of how bad those cycles felt, the gut-wrenching pain of contempt, the deep hurt of criticism, the suffocating frustration of stonewalling is allowed to fade due to that forgetting curve.
It becomes easier to slip back into those patterns.
Much easier. Without the strong internal warning system that a clear memory of that intense relational pain would provide, partners are left incredibly vulnerable to reenacting the very dynamics that caused so much distress in the first place. The motivation to break the cycle weakens as the memory of its pain dims.
This challenge of forgetting pain also profoundly impacts something maybe less dramatic, but still crucial: habit formation, even simple everyday habits.
Definitely. James Clear, in Atomic Habits, implicitly touches on the forgetting curve even if he doesn't name it that way. He talks about how small improvements can often seem meaningless because they get washed away by the weight of the system.
The system being our old habits and environment.
Right. Now, think about the motivation for changing that system. Often it's the pain or inefficiency of the old way, the frustration of clutter, the guilt of procrastination, the physical discomfort of being inactive.
Okay.
If that initial pain, that negative feeling associated with the old system is forgotten, what happens to the motivation for layering small changes to build new, better habits?
It probably weakens considerably. You lose the why.
Exactly. You lose the emotional impetus, that little bit of grit needed to push through the initial discomfort or boredom of forming a new habit because you no longer viscerally recall the discomfort of staying the same. The contrast isn't as sharp anymore.
And Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, from motivation and personality, how does that fit in?
Maslow's hierarchy suggests we're driven by unmet needs, starting with basic physiological and safety needs, then moving up towards belonging, esteem, and self-actualization.
Right.
Once a lower-level need is reasonably satisfied, say, you achieve financial stability after a period of intense insecurity, the memory of the acute pain or anxiety related to its absence might recede significantly.
So once you feel safe, you forget how scary it was not to feel safe.
To some extent, yes. This can lead to a kind of complacency, making us vulnerable. We might forget the desperation that drove us to build that security, making us less vigilant against threats or less motivated to maintain the systems, like budgeting or saving, that provide that security. The deep driving force of that foundational pain can simply dissipate as the need is met, leaving us potentially adrift or susceptible to falling back.
B.F. Skinner's behaviorism offers a different, maybe more stark perspective on this too, in Beyond Freedom and Dignity.
Yes, Skinner emphasized the environment's role in shaping behavior. He famously said the environment does not push or pull, it selects. Our behaviors are selected and maintained by their consequences within our environment.
So how does forgetting pain fit Skinner's model?
Well, if we forget the painful contingencies, the negative consequences or the unpleasant feedback loops in our environment that shaped our past undesirable behavior, we lose the crucial motivation to consciously reshape our environment to support new, better habits.
The trigger is still there, but the memory of the bad outcome is gone.
Essentially, yes. The selective pressure that drove the initial change, the remembered pain of the consequences, dissipates with memory loss. This allows old environmental cues to reassert their influence much more easily without that strong counterbalancing force of remembered pain telling us, don't go there. And Alfred Adler's perspective in the practice and theory of individual psychology adds another layer. Adler focused on the striving for superiority or significance, often stemming from early feelings of inferiority.
Okay, how does that relate?
If past pain, failures, or perceived deficiencies, the very things that might fuel that striving in complicated ways, are forgotten or suppressed, then the maladaptive patterns we develop to cope might resurface, maybe seeking validation in destructive ways or avoiding challenges altogether.
But remembering the pain could help.
Adler might suggest that actively remembering the pain associated with past struggles and understanding its roots can help redirect that inherent striving towards more constructive goals, towards what he called social interest and healthy personal growth. Forgetting allows those old, potentially self-defeating patterns driven by forgotten wounds to take over again.
Wow. Okay, here's where the implications truly hit home. This deep dive is showing us that forgetting isn't just this passive fading. Our minds are actively working, often subconsciously, to shield us from discomfort.
It's an active process.
But this protection, however well-intentioned it might seem from a psychological standpoint, can become a serious trap. It lulls us into a false sense of security, or worse, actively draws us back towards past harms by making them seem less threatening or even appealing.
It's the paradox of self-preservation.
So, if our natural inclination, hardwired by psychology and maybe even biology, is to forget the very pain that spurred our growth, how do we fight back? How do we proactively nurture those uncomfortable but absolutely crucial memories? Okay, now for the truly actionable part. This is what everyone listening probably wants to know. If our minds are predisposed to forget the pain and romanticize the past, what can you actually do about it? How can you actively remember your why and solidify your progress?
Right. How do we prevent that slide back down the forgetting curve when our own brains seem to be working against us sometimes?
It sounds like it requires conscious effort. We need to override our natural but sometimes self-sabotaging tendencies to build resilience instead of falling into complacency.
Exactly. We need to move beyond just passively recalling memories, assuming they'll stick around. We need to embrace active, conscious recapitulation, and narrative building.
Recapitulation and narrative building, what does that involve?
It involves deliberately engaging with our past experiences, especially the difficult ones, rather than allowing them to fade or be automatically re-edited by our subconscious for comfort. It's about taking control of our story consciously.
Okay, so how do we do that? Martin Seligman, in Flourish, he talks about post-traumatic growth, right? Does that offer clues?
It absolutely does. A key element Seligman discusses in achieving post-traumatic growth is creating a trauma narrative.
Yeah.
This isn't just about recounting the facts of what happened.
It's more than just the events.
Much more. It's about viewing the trauma or the difficult experience not as a purely negative event that defines you, but as, in his words, a fork in the road that enhances the appreciation of paradox.
Paradox? Like what?
Like recognizing that loss and gain both happen, grief and gratitude both happen. It's about integrating the whole experience. By deliberately telling the story of the trauma, perhaps through writing, therapy, or talking with trusted others, we integrate it.
And integration prevents suppression or distortion.
That's the idea. Integration allows the painful lessons to become wisdom, a part of your stronger, more complex self, rather than just a distant, fading memory you're trying to avoid. It transforms adversity into a source of enduring strength and meaning, keeping the why alive.
That narrative work sounds powerful, but maybe daunting. Are there more sort of everyday tools?
Absolutely. Our own 5 Psychological Truths resource, for example, provides a very practical tool, the Daily Survival Log.
What's that?
It encourages you to simply write, be concrete, date your entries, and keep it honest. Just the act of regularly noting down things like, what is my top 1 today and why does it matter, forces active recall of your current challenges and, crucially, your underlying motivations.
So it keeps the why front and center daily.
Exactly. And there's also a section for notes and reflections, for free writing about decisions, emotions, and patterns you notice. And importantly, it suggests you update your identity script weekly.
Update your identity script. What does that mean?
It means consciously reflecting on who you are becoming as a result of your changes and challenges, reinforcing the new narrative. This consistent, honest self-reflection acts as a powerful counterforce to that natural tendency to forget or distort the past pain that led you here.
I love that update your identity script weekly. It's so proactive. It's about consciously deciding who you are now, actively embodying that person, rather than passively letting the old self creep back in as the memories fade.
Precisely. And Albert Bandura's social learning theory also supports this idea of active processing. He talks about verification processes.
Verification.
Yeah, where thoughts about thoughts are developed by comparing the thought representations with experiential evidence. In simpler terms, when we explicitly state and verify our past experiences, maybe talking them through, writing them down, checking facts, especially the painful ones, we provide that undeniable experiential evidence.
So it grounds the memory in reality.
Right. It makes it harder for our minds to simply edit out the uncomfortable truths later on. It anchors the narrative.
Okay, so conscious narrative work, daily reflection. What else? Can we shape our environment?
Absolutely. Beyond the internal work, we can proactively engineer our environment and habits to make it physically harder to forget or revert to old patterns. Our surroundings play a huge, often subconscious role in triggering behaviors, both good and bad.
James Clear's Atomic Habits is all about this, isn't it? Making good habits easy and bad habits hard.
Exactly. He provides excellent practical strategies. He talks about reducing friction for good habits, like laying out your gym clothes the night before, and priming the environment to make desired actions easier.
So we can flip that for bad habits we want to avoid.
Precisely. We can powerfully invert this, prime the environment to make bad behaviors difficult, increase the friction.
Can you give an example related to forgetting pain?
Sure. Let's say the pain you want to remember was associated with excessive mindless TV watching that led to neglecting other important things. Clear suggests you could unplug the television after each use. Or, if you're really hardcore, he jokes, you could take the batteries out of the remote after each use, so it takes an extra 10 seconds to turn it back on.
That little bit of friction makes you pause and maybe remember why you didn't want to do it.
Exactly. The key insight is, the greater the friction, the less likely the habit. By making the old, problematic behavior slightly more effortful, you create a moment for conscious thought, potentially triggering the memory of the pain you're trying to avoid forgetting. It's a direct, practical application of fighting the ease of reverting.
And this connects back to B.F. Skinner's ideas too, right? About the environment selecting behavior.
Correctly. Skinner emphasized the selective role of the environment in shaping and maintaining the behavior of the individual. He stated clearly that it is the contingencies which must be changed if his behavior is to be changed.
So identify the triggers and consequences.
Yes. To actively remember and avoid repeating past pain, we must identify the specific environmental cues and contingencies, the triggers and the ultimate consequences that led to that pain. Then, we make conscious, deliberate efforts to change or remove those triggers from our present environment. By disrupting those old pathways, we prevent our subconscious from easily dragging us back down them when the memory of the pain starts to fade.
Okay, so internal work, environmental engineering. What about mindset? Does how we think about challenges matter?
Immensely. Another powerful strategy is cultivating a growth mindset and connecting with a strong, clearly defined sense of purpose. This helps us reframe challenges and maintain motivation long after the initial acute pain of the before picture has inevitably faded.
Carol Dweck's mindset work again. How does a growth mindset help here?
Dweck explains that the passion for stretching yourself and sticking to it, even or especially when it's not going well, is the hallmark of the growth mindset. This mindset helps you view setbacks or temptations not as failures or proof that you can't change, but as learning opportunities.
So it stops you from giving up when the initial painful motivation fades.
Exactly. It prevents you from succumbing to old patterns because you see your capacity for growth as ongoing. It's a continuous journey, not a destination defined solely by avoiding that one specific past pain. The motivation shifts from just avoiding bad to pursuing growth.
And finding a deeper purpose. How does that help fight the forgetting curve?
Daniel Pink, in Drive, talks about the power of purpose as a motivator. He suggests orienting your life toward purpose by thinking about, as he puts it, your sentence, like the one sentence that would summarize your life's contribution.
She invented a device that made people's lives easier, was his example, right?
Right. He asks, what's your sentence? Defining this big question, your overarching purpose, your why, beyond just avoiding immediate pain, provides a clear, enduring North Star. It transcends temporary discomfort or the fading memory of past suffering. It gives you a compass that points beyond the immediate, grounding your daily actions in something larger and more meaningful.
So when the memory of the pain fades, the memory of the purpose remains strong.
That's the hope. And Angela Duckworth's work on grit echoes this perfectly. She emphasizes the importance of having top-level life-organizing goals. She speaks of her own enduring interest in helping children do so much more with their lives as her overarching purpose.
And that long-term goal provides resilience.
Yes, this kind of long-term, deeply held purpose provides an unwavering why. It helps combat what she calls catastrophic self-talk during setbacks and provides the passion and perseverance needed to stay on track, even when that original pain is no longer a vivid, screaming reminder in your head. It transforms mere motivation based on past pain into enduring passion based on future purpose.
Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning seems like the ultimate testament to this, doesn't it? Finding purpose even in horrific suffering.
Absolutely. Frankl's experience profoundly illustrates that even in the most unimaginable suffering, finding a purpose, a why to live for, can provide the strength not only to endure, but to transcend. So in our context, actively remembering the past pain, but consciously imbuing it with meaning and linking it to a larger purpose becomes an incredibly powerful force against simply forgetting and reverting.
And Jordan Peterson, in Maps of Meaning, he talks about navigating chaos and order. How might that relate?
Peterson argues that life is a constant navigation between the stability of order and the challenge and potential of chaos. Meaning is found in confronting chaos voluntarily, forgetting the painful lessons learned from involuntarily confronting chaos, the struggles, the failures, the deep discomfort, makes us complacent within our established, comfortable order.
So forgetting makes us vulnerable.
Yes. When the memory of that pain fades, we become vulnerable, unprepared for the inevitable return of chaos, whether it's an old destructive habit resurfacing or a completely new life challenge appearing. Remembering the struggle, understanding the lessons learned from chaos, is a constant reminder to stay vigilant, adaptable, and prepared to integrate the hard-won wisdom of suffering.
Okay, one last area. Social support and communication. How vital are other people in this process?
They are vital. We are fundamentally social creatures. Seeking social support and enhancing our communication skills are crucial tools in this fight against the forgetting curve. Our environment includes the people around us, their beliefs, and how we interact with them. Even for introverts, as Susan Cain highlights in Quiet, Deep, Meaningful Connections, used well, can be powerful.
How does social support help us remember? Back to Festinger.
Yes, Festinger himself noted that social groups serve as a valuable resource for reducing cognitive dissonance, as individuals often seek confirmation of their beliefs from others.
So talking about it helps solidify it.
Right. Sharing your why, articulating your past pain and your reasons for change within a supportive, empathetic environment. Maybe a support group, a therapist, trusted friends can solidify your commitment. When others validate your difficult experiences and your reasons for growth, it provides crucial external reinforcement. It counters that internal tendency to minimize, romanticize, or forget, making your personal narrative more robust and resilient.
And in relationships specifically, communication is key to not repeating cycles.
Absolutely. The authors of Attached give very specific advice. For example, if you have an anxious attachment style, they advise you to turn to effective communication when you feel you are starting to resort to protest behavior.
Instead of acting out, talk it out.
Yes. Consciously articulate your needs and feelings rather than acting out in ways that might push your partner away. This requires remembering the pain of past communication failures and consciously choosing a different path. It prevents that cycle of forgotten or miscommunicated pain that leads to repetitive issues. But they also caution it might take time to calm down enough to communicate effectively.
Right, self-regulation is part of it. Now, Dan Ariely, in Predictably Irrational, he talked about pre-commitments, like using external accountability. How does that fit?
Ariely makes a strong case that we often fail at long-term goals because we're, well, predictably irrational. We consistently underestimate the power of temptation in the moment. Without pre-commitments, he argues, we keep on falling for temptation.
So setting things up in advance to hold ourselves accountable.
Exactly. Having an authoritative external voice, whether that's a commitment contract, a financial penalty set up with a friend, joining a program with check-ins, or even just telling people your goals, or consciously committing to a preferred path of action before temptation strikes, can counteract our tendency to give in when the painful memory of why we made the commitment has faded.
It's like creating an external reminder of the why when our internal memory fails us.
Precisely. It's about building a multi-layered defense system against our own predictable human tendencies to forget the pain and chase immediate gratification. It acknowledges our fallibility and plans for it. Hashtag, outro to history. Wow, we've really covered a vast landscape today. We went from Hermann Ebbinghaus's very first experiments quantifying memory decay with nonsense syllables.
Yeah, all the way to the deep psychological forces, cognitive dissonance, defense mechanisms, narrative construction that compel us to forget pain and often romanticize our past.
And the core insight, I think, is that forgetting isn't just this passive loss of information over time. It's often an active subconscious process.
Driven by our deep-seated desire for comfort, for internal consistency.
Exactly. But this process can be particularly dangerous when it comes to those hard-won lessons, the ones born from significant pain that propelled us towards crucial change in the first place. It can inadvertently sabotage our own journey of growth.
So what does this all mean for you, for your journey, if you're listening? The predictability of the forgetting curve, especially for painful memories, means we really need to be proactive. We have to consciously engage in memory maintenance.
It won't just happen automatically.
Right. Whether it's the acute pain that pushed you to leave a damaging relationship, or overcome an addiction, or make a significant career pivot, or maybe just adopt a healthier lifestyle. Remembering that why isn't accidental.
No, it's a deliberate, ongoing practice.
Yeah, a practice of building a conscious narrative around the experience, engineering your environment to support your goals, cultivating a growth mindset, defining your deeper purpose, and strategically leveraging social support and clear communication.
It's about consciously nurturing the memories that serve your future self, especially when they're uncomfortable.
Because those uncomfortable truths, the memory of that pain, paradoxically, are often the most powerful, sustained motivators for genuine, lasting change. Ignoring them or letting them fade is convenient, but costly.
Which really brings us to a fascinating, perhaps final, provocative question to leave people with. If our minds are constantly editing our past, and our memory itself is so fluid, so malleable, so subject to our psychological defenses, what does it truly mean to have learned a lesson from the past?
Is it just about avoiding the immediate discomfort now?
Or is it something deeper? Is it a truly integrated understanding, one that acknowledges the pain without being ruled by it, that can actively shape a more resilient future? A future where we are not inevitably doomed to repeat the past because we've forgotten its sting, but where we can actually transform its legacy through continuous conscious remembrance and meaning-making.
That's a powerful thought to reflect on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep reflecting, keep questioning, and maybe most importantly, after today, keep remembering your why. We'll be back soon with another exploration into what makes us tick.